Welcome to episode 7 of Sussex Sport Weekly. I'm Matt Pole, and as ever, I'm joined by Brighton and Hove Albion writers Derren Howard and Frankie Elliott. This week, we're joined by one third of the Footballing Question podcast, Jordan Grainger. He'll be giving us the lowdown on Lewes Women, who will host Manchester United in the quarterfinals of the Women's FA Cup this Sunday. But first, we'll start with the Seagulls, who had a week of wildly contrasting fortunes. Albion were held to a 2-2 draw at relegation threatened Leeds United on Saturday, before picking up a 1-0 win over bitter rivals Crystal Palace on Wednesday night. Brighton have the chance to book a place at Wembley on Sunday when they host giant killers Grimsby Town in the FA Cup quarterfinals, and we'll preview that game later on in the podcast. But going back to Saturday at Ellen Road, Derren, Albion were pegged back twice by Leeds, but probably should have won it at the death as Danny Welbeck curled an effort over with just Meslier to beat. How would you assess the draw? Was it a good point in hindsight?
It was one they should have won, to be honest, Matt. They when you're going for those European spots, you just hope that they don't look back on that and think, oh, that was, a couple of points that we dropped there, which because of how well they played overall, it was 2 points dropped, unfortunately. And De Zerbi said that in the press conference after the match, that he's more disappointed than previously they've lost against Fulham in the last seconds. Then also against Palace at Selhurst Park, they let a couple of points slide there as well. And he said this one was the most disappointed he's been since being in charge, because they played so well. They just kept the ball well at the back. They silenced the crowd. It can be pretty hostile up at Ellen Road, but because they kept the ball so well, the crowd were out of the game and they were creating chances as well. Matoma looked really good as well. He wasn't always in the game, but he just looked so dangerous. And when he did have the chance to provide assists and be that goal threat, he looked very, very dangerous for Brighton. Leeds, they did get back again, deflected effort, and then a bit of lapse in concentration at the end, and it was a great finish that made it 2-2. But overall, Matt, 2 points dropped, unfortunately.
Going off script a little bit, Derren, Leeds United landed themselves, or the supporters especially, landed themselves in a bit of hot water on against Brighton. Can you explain a little bit about that and what happened?
Yeah, there was some. Are you referring to the chanting that was?
Indeed, yes.
Yeah. There was unfortunately some of the Leeds supporters group. They reported to the in a meeting afterwards that there was some homophobic chanting directed towards the Brighton fans, they have a supporters group up at Ellen Road that get together and have a meeting, and it was relayed to the club about what's happened, and there were a couple of Brighton fans that reported being on the receiving end of this as well. And to be fair, the club have actually been working with the supporters groups on this to try and eradicate this from the terraces up at Ellen Road. And it is a small minority, a few stupid people who are sort of who were involved in this. But the club, to be fair to them, they are trying to find out who it is and get rid of this from Ellen Road and just encourage inclusivity across all. So that was a disappointing aspect of it.
Going back to matters on the pitch, the 2 goals Brighton scored against Leeds saw them surpass their highest ever Premier League tally by reaching 45. Obvious evidence that Roberto De Zerbi is weaving his magic at the Amex. But Albion, as Derren mentioned, were perhaps guilty of wasteful finishing at Leeds. Could you make the case that Brighton could and perhaps should have scored more goals this season, Frankie?
You definitely can. I mean, we've discussed previously that Brighton have always been associated with missing chances and not scoring enough. And I think that's more evident now that we're seeing that Brighton, as I said last week, are creating better chances in regards to XG. The quality of their chances are going up, but they are missing out on some victories. If you look at the 4 games they haven't won in 2023, which is the Fulham at home and the draws to Leicester, Leeds and Crystal Palace away, they took the lead in those 3 draws and then were pegged back with half an hour to go. And in all those games, you could have said they could have killed it off before the opposition had a chance to get back into the game. So that is what it will hurt them, because those were, as much as it is an amazing feat to have only lost 1 game in 2023 so far and be in this hunt for European football, they could be, even further into this and even in a stronger position, because Leeds and Crystal Palace and Leicester look at it and go, well, we were ahead in those games and we were dominating the chances and we were creating lots of great goal scoring opportunities, as you alluded to there. The Danny Welbeck chance on Saturday would have got them all 3 points, so that's an extra 2 points gained in this race, where it's also very, very close with the other teams. And in the Fulham game as well, that game was 0-0 to the 90th minute, and then they lost the game. And that's obviously 3 points lost. But before that, they had many, many chances to kill it off, and you don't want that to hurt you in the end, because as great as this season has been so far, and as great as Brighton have been to watch, and their attacking football has been pleasing on the eye, and the amount of goals they've scored is a lot better than before. Results is what they need, and I hope it doesn't cost them at the end of the season if they want to get European football.
Solly March was awarded Brighton's second goal at Leeds after it was initially given to White's midfielder Jack Harrison. He followed that up by firing home Albion's eventual winner against Palace on Wednesday. March has now scored 7 Premier League goals in 25 games this season, and only Marcus Rashford and Erling Haaland have scored more non-penalty Premier League goals than Solly March since Boxing Day. How integral has March become to Roberto De Zerbi and Albion in recent weeks, Derren? And has his excellent season kind of taken people by surprise a little bit?
He's very integral. Yeah, he's been great this season, and I think it certainly has surprised many fans this season, because he didn't score at all last campaign. And if you'd have said to Albion fans last season, the answer to their goal scoring problems, is going to be Solly March and a 2.5 million signing from Japan, plus maybe an untested 18-year-old in Evan Ferguson, you'd have received a few strange looks. I think, a lot of fans are asking to sign this striker, and it's these three that have really been the danger men this year. But yeah, March is, he's 28 now. He's at the peak of his career, and he's sort of, he's getting the best out of himself as well. He's really playing to his best, and full credit to him to keep plugging away, and full credit to De Zerbi as well. He's now playing March. He's seen something in him which other managers haven't, and he's getting him into positions where he's getting into dangerous areas, and he now has the confidence and and the composure to finish off these chances. So yeah, it's great to see, and because he's a local lad as well, I think the fans, they love that as well.
Gareth Southgate names his England squad a little bit later on today, and both Solly March and Brighton skipper Lewis Dunk have been tipped to be called up for the Euro 2020 qualifiers against Italy and Ukraine, respectively, later on this month. De Zerbi said in his pre-match press conference before Leeds that the pair deserved a place in Southgate's squad. What do you think the chances are of Southgate selecting the pair of them, Frankie, or is it going to be a case of it's going to be the same old faces in the England squad?
I think of the two, Solly March has got the best opportunity. I think Gareth Southgate, as we've seen at his time as England manager, he very much the key attribute he looks for is trust. He needs to trust his players. That's why he has been criticised at times for picking players over and over again. The Harry Maguire incident from the World Cup just been, but that's because he sees the England form and the trust he has in those players as the most important quality. Why Solly March fits into that is because he's worked with him when Southgate was under-21 manager of England, so he knows what he's like as a player. He's been in the England setup with Southgate, not for a very long period of time, but there is their bond, there is their understanding, and that could stand him, very well, considering now he's playing well enough to be earning a call up. You also look at the players in that position. Jadon Sancho has not been playing very well. Raheem Sterling has picked up an injury recently, so there's an opportunity for a wide player to be called up in this next squad. And as you say, Solly March's form, especially coming out since the World Cup, has been nothing short of phenomenal. And so I could really see him being named and being given the opportunity in these qualifiers. With Lewis Dunk, you would say he has been playing as well. He's been playing in the top bracket of defenders this season, but I do fear that his age may cost him an opportunity. I think with Southgate probably looking at his last tournament as England manager, I think his key thing will be building for the future and putting a squad in place that if they don't win the Euros, the next manager that takes on has got a very good chance of winning the World Cup. So players like Tomori and Rico Lewis, who I know is a right back, but could play in a back three, they might pip him and get ahead of someone like Dunk. But there is an opportunity there as well. I believe Connor Cody is will not be selected for this squad. Tyrone Mings' form is coming to question again as well. And those are players that Dunk has been playing better than them this season. So he has every right to believe, and both players have every right to believe. But the fact that there is no prior experience or relationship with Southgate, plus his age, is always going to stand Dunk against him being in the England squad.
Well, both March and Dunk did their England chances no harm against Palace on Wednesday. And as mentioned earlier, March was on the score sheet while Lewis Dunk helped Albion keep a clean sheet in the 1-0 win. Win over the Eagles, which was Brighton's first over their bitter rival since 2019, also continued Albion's charge towards European football. The only negative was Roberto De Zerbi receiving a yellow card on the hour, which means he will serve another one-match touchline ban. But all in all, a very good night for Brighton, Derren.
Yeah, it was one of those nights where it was the result was all that mattered. It seemed. As we sort of mentioned, they came close against Leeds and they came close against Palace at Selhurst Park before Rob Sanchez's howler at Selhurst Park. But it looked to be one of those matches where they got the lead, and previously De Zerbi may have, continued, on the attack mode, but for this one, they showed a different side to the game, that they are prepared to dig in and just do whatever it takes to get the result. And I think they needed to do that, especially after the disappointment at Leeds, to come along and then play against Palace so soon after that match and show the type of resilience that was needed to do that. I think all credit to the team. But yeah, another touchline ban for De Zerbi, another booking, and also another booking for Caicedo as well. That's his eighth of the season now, and he is such a great player. But I'm sure that's something that they'll want to sort of try and eradicate from his game a little bit, and it's something for him to improve on. But yeah, as you say, it's 7th in the table, puts them level with Liverpool, and well in the mix for the European places.
Well, yeah, speaking of European places, the win over Palace moved Brighton to within 6 points of 4th place Tottenham. Albion have 2 games in hand over Spurs and also have a better goal difference. De Zerbi said this week that they are right to regard themselves as Champions League contenders, and that's a sentiment that's been shared by Moises Caicedo and Adam Lallana. Frankie, can Albion reach European football's top tier next season? And if so, what must they do to keep the dream alive?
I truly believe that they can. The sort of end of season run and the factors that are all taking place for this to happen reminds you very much of the sort of Leicester title winning season from 2015-2016. In regards, you've got a great team that have come out of nowhere in Brighton, but you've also got the top teams not playing particularly well and giving an opportunity for a team like Brighton, Brentford or Fulham and Newcastle as well to jump in and take a Champions League spot. We're looking at Spurs currently sitting in 4th place. We've seen the issues there this season. Conte does not seem happy. The players don't seem happy. There's no idea about what the future head coach is going to be, whether that be Conte or somebody else. So there seems to be disarray at that club, and they seem there to be taking. Liverpool as well, very much a team in transition. It feels like we are seeing the end of this dominant Klopp era, and in between that they are giving away needless losses and draws, so points are being dropped left, right and centre by those 2 teams. And obviously with Newcastle, they are still very much unpredictable as a big club. They've started the season very well, but recently we're seeing the issues with goal scoring and winning games in the latter half of the season. So Brighton have got the perfect opportunity to take advantage of this gap of a 4th team being the strong 4th team that will just dominate and take the last Champions League spot, and they've got the ability to do so. As we've seen, the quality of their play this season has been excellent, and the way they've been playing over the last couple of weeks and since the World Cup, they've been one of the best teams in the league. But what's going to be key for me is they've got the 2 away games against Spurs and Newcastle, the other teams they're challenging for the Champions League. Those are going to be very, very tough games away from home at St James's Park and the Tottenham Hotspur Stadium. For those teams gunning for the Champions League football, that'll be a test of their character and whether they can really handle the heat, as they've been speaking about in the last couple of weeks, and whether they're up to the test. And then on top of that, Brighton have won 4 of their last 5 home games. I think they've got 5 home games left this season, which is Brentford, Man City, Wolves, Everton, Southampton. Bar Man City, those are all very much winnable games. I think to stand any chance, they need to turn the Amex into a fortress. We've seen the great atmospheres for the win last night against Crystal Palace, the 2 wins over Liverpool, and that memorable 4-1 win over Chelsea. I think the crowd have really drive the team on, and De Zerbi is very adamant about how important the home atmosphere is. So picking up 5 victories from those last 5 home games, or at least 4. Obviously, Man City are a top side, but you never know, obviously, when they're away from home. But if they can win all their home games and stand up to the fight against Spurs and Newcastle in those big games away from home, they've got every opportunity.
It was also announced this week that Adam Lallana has agreed a new one-year deal at Brighton. De Zerbi said he was delighted that the ex-Liverpool midfielder has committed to the club, and in recent weeks, Howard Lallana's work in helping the Brighton coaches as well as the young players at the Amex. How valuable is Lallana to Brighton, Derren, and how much of a boon is his new contract to Roberto De Zerbi?
Yeah, he would admit himself more than he has during his. He arrived from Liverpool on a free transfer on a 3-year deal, and he's got another year on his deal, and I think that just shows the value that De Zerbi places in Lallana, even at sort of 34 years old with a long track record of injury. He can still deliver these moments of brilliance on the pitch when he plays. He still has it in him. He's never going to play sort of 30-40 matches a season, you wouldn't have thought, but he can still produce those moments in short bursts, which and De Zerbi says when Lallana plays well, we play well. But it's more than that. It's what he offers to the young players coming through. They can see a player such as Lallana, who's won Champions League football. He's an international. So the players coming through, the likes of Alexis McAllister's learnt of him in the past 2 or 3 seasons. Billy Gilmore as well, and then the young South Americans that they've brought in as well recently, and Seiso and Buonatti. They can all look at Lallana and just see what it takes to compete in the Premier League and to compete at the top level. And for De Zerbi, Lallana is almost his, he calls him the teacher, because he sees him as a future manager, and he could potentially see Lallana play this year out on a playing contract, and then perhaps move into a coaching capacity as well. So I think it's a great move from Brighton to give him another year.
Meanwhile, Pascal Gross made his 200th Albion appearance on Wednesday against Palace. Since signing from German club, and I apologise if I butcher this, FC Ingolstadt in 2017, Brighton's former record signing, has scored 24 goals and registered 34 assists in all competitions. Last week, De Zerbi hailed the German as one of the best players he's ever managed in his coaching career. How big of an impact has Gross had at Albion since his move, Frankie, and where does he stand among Brighton's all-time greats?
He's been pivotal to them becoming a Premier League club, an established Premier League club, and being able to build from that and become a team that now is challenging at the top end of the table. I think a team that comes up from the Championship, signing a player from a foreign division who's got no experience of England, it can very much feel like a coin flip. I mean, there's countless players that have been signed for actually larger sums of money than Pascal Gross from other teams that have gone and done absolutely nothing. But for Pascal Gross to come in and to be with all 3 managers that have managed in the Premier League for Brighton, to be in all 3 eras of the club and to transition and change his role so smoothly and effectively and still be one of the most important players of the team is fantastic. When he first joined, he was, the supporting goal scorer to Glenn Murray. He was a pivotal player in getting, he got 8 goals in his first season under Chris Hughton. Then he moved with Graham Potter, who became a utility man, playing into the full-back roles, in the attacking mid roles and the centre mid roles, being able to slot into the various systems that Potter used to build Brighton and keep them away from the relegation zone. And now we're seeing under De Zerbi, he's become a leader. He's become one of the most important figures in the change room as a senior player, and also just showing his technical qualities. I think under the De Zerbi style of football, we're really seeing what a technically gifted player Pascal Gross is. And I think in his current position, the centre mid role, he's allowed for McAllister to go further forward, which I think suits him. And in the 4-2-3-1 system, it really shows Brighton at their best and Pascal Gross at his best as well in contributing not only going forwards with a number of assists in recent weeks, and also his second highest goal scoring season since his debut season in the Premier League, but also defensively his work rate and effort and understanding of the game has helped De Zerbi and Brighton no end. So yeah, one of the all-time greats in regards to taking Brighton from a promoted Premier League side to an established Premier League side.
Brighton entertain League Two Grimsby Town in the FA Cup on Sunday. Most people are more or less certain that Brighton are going to advance to the semi-finals, but the Mariners have already knocked out Premier League club Southampton this season, so not a foregone conclusion, is it, Derren?
It really isn't, no. Grimsby are coming, obviously they're League Two, and this is, perhaps, the biggest game those players are ever going to play, the biggest game in the club's history for some time. They've got a chance to get to a Wembley semi-final, and a team from League Two. That's really something that perhaps these players are never going to get that opportunity again. So you can't take them lightly. It's a really, it really is that Brighton are used to being the underdog against some of the big Premier League teams, but it's role reversal now. And Brighton are really going to have to be quite careful. They're going to have to, treat this match with all the, respect that they should. I'm sure they will as well. You don't think De Zerbi will let the players be too complacent going into this, but it's a great opportunity for them. It's a great draw, but it's also one of those ones where you just kind of think, wow, they're going to be playing for their lives, the Grimsby players, and first of all, Brighton are going to have to deal with that, and then hopefully their class and their skill can then come through otherwise. But it's going to be a good atmosphere. The Grimsby have sold out their allocation of fans. There's going to be quite a few Harry the Haddocks in the stadium. There's no ban on the Harry the Haddocks, according to Paul Barber, so they'll be out in force. And yeah, I expect a really competitive match this Sunday. Sorry.
What type of team do you expect De Zerbi to put out on Sunday, Frankie? Do you reckon he will rotate but include a sprinkling of world-class stars, or is he maybe not going to show Grimsby the respect they deserve and maybe do a full rotation?
I think there'll be. I think the mix was more likely, but I'm not expecting to see too many players taken out that probably started last night. I think in regards to how De Zerbi has seen the FA Cup, he has seen that it is a very important competition, and even against Stoke City from the Championship in the last round, we saw 2 or 3 players who haven't regularly started for Brighton come in. So there may be an opportunity for players like Sarriento to be able to get another game, and John Paul Van Heck may be given an opportunity as well, just because they played so well in the last round. But I very much expect De Zerbi to be naming at least 8 or 9 first team players, because this is like we've said on previous episodes, this is Brighton's best opportunity to get to a Wembley semi-final, and also possibly a final and winning the competition, which not only it would be an amazing achievement for the club and a memorable season for the fans and their first piece of major silverware, but for De Zerbi and the club overall, it's an opportunity to play Europa League football. So that you can look at it twofold. It's important in all aspects. So to not give it its full respect and play the strongest team you possibly could, I think would be foolish, and I don't think De Zerbi would ever consider doing anything other than going for the strongest team.
Brighton have at least another 13 games left to play this season, and very much defied expectations under Roberto De Zerbi. But I'd be interested to hear, Frankie and Derren, who you would say are the early front runners for Albion's Player of the Year. Derren, I'll come to you first. Who do you think's in the running after this season?
You have to look at the wide players, Solly March and Mitoma. I think just because they've been so successful this season and taken many by surprise, they've really added that cutting edge and provided Albion with exactly what they needed this season, and something they've been lacking in the previous campaign. Lewis Dunk, he's been, he's just gone up another level yet again, and he's playing a sort of almost a different role, and he's adapting to De Zerbi's style, where he's the one starting the attacks. He's the main guy on the ball who plays it into the midfield areas, and he's playing that role really well. He's a lot better on the ball than perhaps many fans that don't watch Brighton every week give him credit for. So for me, those are the three that have really stood out. Moises Caicedo's obviously been very good as well, but there was all that transfer saga. So whether that will count against him or not, you never know. But for me, Dunk, Kara Matoma and Solly March.
Frankie, who are your runners and riders?
I agree with Derren that the wide players, especially Matoma, for the impact he's had, will be very much a favourite. But Solly March has got to be up there as well, because he's been. I think he started every Premier League game for Brighton this season. He's been a phenomenal player. But for me personally, I think he should be going to Caicedo. He has been a revelation in that midfield. Obviously, he was linked with a big move, but he was linked with a big move for a reason, because since he's come into the team almost this time last year, he's transformed Brighton. Their results have been transformed, and we've seen time and time again what a quality player he is at such a young age. Another one I'd like to throw in there is Estupiñán, because for a debut season, coming in under a lot of pressure, considering that last year's player of the season, Cucurella, had left on a big money move to Chelsea. It was unknown how he would do in the Premier League in his first season, but he's been excellent, and he's excelled, and he's getting better and better each week. So unlikely that he will win over the players mentioned prior, but it's a special mention for someone that's done so well in his first season in the Premier League.
I'm surprised to hear neither of you mention Alexis McAllister. What has he not done to impress you two this season then?
I know. Well, he's only won the World Cup, hasn't he? So I think he's had his glory. He's had his moment.
I think that's what I mean. It's testament to how well this Brighton team has played. This is not it's not as simple as just naming one player. I mean, there's an argument really for 7, 8, 9 players to be player of the year. There have been so many, Pascal Gross as well. Players like that, Joel Veltman and Adam Webster won't win it, but they have been solid every time they've played. It's Evan Ferguson on his debut season, the amount of goals he's contributed. There's so many players that you could name that have done incredibly well, and the fact we've missed out a guy that's won the World Cup just is testament to that, because all around the pitch, Brighton have been excellent, and that's a credit to the whole squad.
Moving away from Brighton and Hove Albion, this Sunday sees Lewes Women host Man United in the Women's FA Cup quarterfinals live in front of the BBC cameras. The Rooks are the lowest ranked team left in the competition and face a team challenging for the Women's Super League title. And you can read all the post-match reaction online at sussexworld.co.uk/sport. Mr. Jordan Grainger will be there. Thank you for joining us, Jordan. It's a massive game for Lewes, but for the uninitiated, could you give us the lowdown of their FA Cup run and their league campaign so far? And who are the Rooks players to look out for, would you say?
Yeah, it's been a decent season for Lewes thus far in both the league and the FA Cup. We'll talk about the league first. 7th in the league as it stands, and they've not struggled, but they've not done unbelievably well. Disappointing, really, in the last 5 games, only 1 win. But you look at the teams that they face. You look at Birmingham, Bristol, who are top of the league at the minute, and London City as well, who are in second place. So Lewes have sort of been like your steady team thus far in the league. The unfortunate thing really about their season so far is, they've only managed 13 goals in 15 games, which is actually the lowest of any team in the division. Then again, they've only conceded 18. So, you take your wins and losses, I guess. Then you look at the FA Cup campaign. You mentioned the lowest team still in the competition, and they've got some very good wins. 5-0 in their first game, 1-0 against Ipswich in their second, and then most recently 6-1 against Cardiff. So, they're performing really well in the FA Cup. Obviously, the next game is a massive step up. It's going to be a massive challenge for them. But, in terms of their season so far, it has been pretty good. In terms of players to look out for, they've got some exciting talent at the club this year, and it's been a good run for them. I'll just name a few players just for a few outs there. Sorry, Amelia Hazard, one of their best players, one of their better players in both the league and the FA Cup, a real creator, dangerous player, and the list of joint second assisters in the FA Cup is quite long, but she's up there, so certainly a player to look out for. Emily Craft as well, one of Lewis's top goal scorers this season, so has been fantastic all year. The last player I'll mention, Ellie Mason at left back. You know, you might be wondering why I'm mentioning a left back here, but you know, top player this season, and you know what, one of the top goal scorers in the FA Cup this season. She scored 4 in the last game against Cardiff, so certainly a player to look out for. You know, that's only 3 players, but certainly a lot of talent in the squad. So it'll be interesting to see how they perform in the next game.
Yeah, quick word on United. As mentioned, they're challenging for the WSL title, but suffered a huge blow last weekend, going down 1-0 at Championship rivals Chelsea. Should the Rooks be bracing themselves from a huge reaction from United after what was probably definitely a disappointing result for them at Chelsea?
Yeah, I mean, you look at Manchester United this season, and you mentioned battling for the WSL title. They've only lost 2 games in the league this season, both of which to Chelsea. Obviously, they have a lot of talented players and stuff. You know, they're really trying to win something this year. But from a Lewes standpoint, there's only 2 real things that they could be thinking here. One, they could be thinking, "Oh God, what are we going to do?" You know, they're going to want to sort of bounce back from that game. But the other thing, you know, can they take advantage of this? You know, they might go into this game sort of all guns blazing, and it could be an opportunity to take advantage for Lewes. You know, Manchester United are quite a free-scoring team, and it might sound a bit obvious, but if they can keep the goals out, you never know what can happen. You talk about sort of, it seems quite cliche to mention it, the magic of the FA Cup, but you know, this is a real opportunity for Lewes. So it's just about, you know, taking advantage of what they can.
Of the field, Lewes are the only football club in the world that pays their men's and women player equally, and they have been the loudest voices in proposing that FA prize money is distributed equally amongst men's and women's teams. This week, the Rooks women's players sent a letter to Karen Carney, who's the chair of the Future of Women's Football Review, reiterating the stance. On the pitch, Jordan, it would be great to see the world's eyes on the Sussex club, but it will also give the club the chance to make the FA and stand up and take notice of the hard work they're doing in making sure the women's game is on the same footing as the men's. How good is it to see Lewes fighting the good fight for equality in women's football? And as mentioned there, it's the perfect stage to do it, surely.
Yeah, I mean, it's amazing. And like you said, the perfect stage to do it. The story behind Lewes and the Lewes women's team especially is really, really inspiring for sure. For a club like them to take the lead in this fight for equality is great to see. You know, that mixed with sort of the Euro success from the Lionesses, you know, it's only a matter of time before we sort of see other teams sort of jumping on the bandwagon with Lewes, and for Lewes to sort of spearhead the idea, you know, like I said, it's really good to see. And yeah, it's only a matter of time before we see an overall change elsewhere as well.
As you may have noticed as well, we're without Crawley Town expert Mark Dunford this week due to an injury he sustained. The man's falling apart, quite simply. All being well, he'll be back next week. But it was a great week for the Reds. Crawley recorded just their second win under Scott Lindsay and broke a 6-game losing run thanks to a 3-1 home win over Harrogate on Sunday. They are now just a point adrift of safety with 2 games in hand over place above Hartlepool, going into Saturday's game at AFC Wimbledon and Tuesday evening's home game with Doncaster. As ever, all the reaction post-match from those games can be viewed at sussexworld.co.uk/sport. And finally, commiserations to Peacehaven and Telscombe, who exited the FA Vase of the quarter-final stage on Saturday following a penalty shootout defeat at Corsham Town. Score predictions, chaps, starting with Brighton and Hove Albion against Grimsby Town. Derren, how do you see that one going?
I'm going to go for a Brighton win, 2-1. I don't think it's going to be easy. I think Grimsby are going to be quite tough opponents. But yes, 2-1 Brighton.
Frankie, how do you see that one going?
I'm going to be slightly more confident. I'm going for a Brighton win, and I think Grimsby will obviously be there and give a lot of effort, but I think the quality will be too much, and so I'm going to go for 4-1 Brighton. Jordan,
are we going for a hat-trick of Brighton wins?
Yeah, Brighton with a win here. I'm gonna say 2-1 as well. You know, it's not going to be really simple for sure, because obviously Grimsby have proven in the rest of the competition that they can do well against the bigger side. But yeah, I expect Brighton to get the win here.
And how do you see Lewes Women against Man United Women going on Sunday as well, Jordan?
Massive test for Lewes. I want to be hopeful for Lewes. So you know, why not? Magic of the FA Cup, right? I'll go for a 1-0 Lewes win.
We going for the magic of the FA Cup, Derren. Lewes doing it against United.
Well, I think it's a sellout, isn't it, at the stadium? So I think the crowd will be all against them. It'd be great to see if they could deliver a shock. I'm going to go Man United, though. Unfortunately, I'm going to go 2-0 Man United.
I'm worried about coming to Frankie now. Was he going to predict a 7-0 win to United?
I'm not going to go that far, but as much as I want to believe in the magic of the cup, and I also want to believe in Lewes, the gap in quality between the Championship and the SPL is very, very high. And United have built a very, very good side over the last couple of years. So I'm going to have to say I'm going to go for a 5-2 United win.
Oh, humdinger. Thank you very much, chaps. That concludes this week's podcast. As mentioned at the top of the episode, John Grainger, you are 1/3 of the Football in Question podcast. Where can we find you, and where can we listen to your work?
We're all over the place. Spotify, YouTube, the Football in Question is the main places to check out.
Brilliant. Thank you very much for your time. And as ever, for all the latest sports reports, news, views and pictures from Sussex, make sure to visit sussexworld.co.uk/sport. Thank you for joining us. And we will see you all next week.